All right, so we have division of binomials, okay? So just a refresher, because you haven't seen this since 9th grade probably, when you're dividing exponents, like x to the 6th power divided by x squared, okay, what you do is you subtract the top exponent minus the bottom exponent. Okay, so x to the 6 minus 4, which means x to the 6 minus 2, which gives us x to the 4th power. Okay, just a refresher. All right, so example 1, divide the binomial by the monomial. Okay, so ones like this, super simple. We probably already done something like this year. You're multiplying that first term on top by the bottom, and then the second term on top by the bottom. So 8x squared divided by 2. We don't have any exponents or any variables on the bottom, so you're just working with your whole numbers right here. So 8 divided by 2 gives you a 4, and then you bring down your x squared. And then 6x divided by 2, so 6 divided by 2 is a positive 3, and you bring down your x. Easy. So same thing over here. 3x divided by 6, 3 over 6, it's not 6 divided by 3, you have the smaller number on top, right? So you're looking at the fraction 3/6, which simplifies to 1/2. Okay. So that means you have a 1/2 x, right? Because 3 over 6 is 1/2, bring down our x. And then 12 divided by 6 is 2. All right, so down here we have variables on the bottom as well. Okay, so we've got to use our rule we learned above to subtract our exponents. So when I do 4x cubed divided by x, really, you know, there's just a 1 in front of that x, right? So 4 divided by 1 is just 4. And then if you have 3 x's and you're taking one away, that leaves you with an x squared. Okay, it's kind of like saying x to the 3rd power means you have 3 x's up top, and you're dividing by 1x. So 1x on top cancels out with 1 on the bottom, leaving you 2 x's. Right, so plus 3x divided by x. So your 1x on top cancels out with the 1 on the bottom, leaving you just a 3. Right, and then your next one, you have 10x squared minus 5x divided by 5x. So 10x squared divided by 5x, 10 divided by 5 is 2. And if you have x squared, that means you have 2 x's on top divided by 1 on the bottom. So 1x on top cancels out with the 1 on the bottom, leaving you just 1x. Okay, or same as saying x to the, you have 2 up here, 1 there, so 2 minus 1 leaves you with just 1. And then a negative 5x divided by 5x, okay? So 5 over 5 is 1, and then x over x is also 1. But we have a negative, so it's going to be a negative 1. All right, now we're dividing binomial by binomial, okay? It's very different. You don't just circle and divide like we were doing earlier. You've got to actually factor, okay? So factoring out terms means you're looking for what 2 terms have in common that you can divide out, okay? So let's start with this example. So if I was looking up top here, right, a negative 6x plus 9, right? Let's see, if I were to look at 6, the factors of 6 are the things that 6 can be broken down into, or things that will multiply to give me 6. So, you know, 1 times 6 equals 6, and then 2 times 3 equals 6, right? So these are the factors of 6. Then for 9, the things that will multiply to give you 9 is 1 times 9 and 3 times 3. So these are the factors of 9, okay? So we're looking for their greatest common factor, right? I know y'all have done this before. the greatest common factor, so greatest meaning the largest, common means they both have it, factor, okay? So the greatest one here is 6. 6 is not a factor of 9, right? 9 wouldn't work because this 9 isn't even a factor of 6. Then our next largest would be 3, and 9 also has a factor of 3. So that is our greatest factor that they both have in common, okay? So GCF is 3. This one was negative. We don't like our first number to be negative, so what we're going to do is we're actually going to factor out a negative 3. So what I mean when I say factor out is I'm going to have negative 3, right? And then it's kind of like I divided both of these terms by negative 3. So negative 6x divided by negative 3, a negative would make it a positive. 6 divided by 3 is 2, and you just bring down the x. And then 9 divided by negative 3 would be negative 3. 9 divided by negative 3 is negative 3. Okay, so that's what we get on top. And then on bottom we have a 2x minus 3. Okay. So this binomial and this binomial are the same. They're being multiplied on top, so we can cancel these out. And we're just left with a negative 3 as our answer. Let's do that again. All right, so this one's written a little differently, but it's okay. It still means this binomial divided by this binomial, right? So I can put my 4x squared minus 2 on the bottom down here, okay? So same thing as before, what you're looking to do is factor out the GCF for both, okay? Up above where we had the negative 6x plus 9, we found that it had a GCF of negative 3, leaving us the 2x minus 3. Well, if I distributed negative 3 back to both the terms, it gives me my original negative 6x plus 9, right? So you're not changing anything, you're just taking out the GCF, okay, so that you can simplify. So here, we're going to look at our GCF for 20 and 10. It starts with a positive, so we don't have to factor out a negative. So the GCF for 20 and 10, and then they also have x's in common, okay? So 20, we're looking for GCFs, but I have x to the 4th, which means I have 4 x's. And then we're looking at our GCF for 10 x squared, so I have 2 x's, okay? So let's go ahead and do our x's. This one has 2 x's, this one has 4, which means they have at most 2 in common, okay? And the things that'll multiply to give you 20 are 1 times 20, 2 times 10, 4 times 5, okay? Things that'll multiply to give you 10 is 1 times 10 and 2 times 5. So they have a lot of factors in common, but we want the greatest common factor. So start with your greatest number, 20. 20 times nothing will give you 10. So they both have a common factor of 10. So that is their GCF, their greatest common factor. And then they both had 2 x's, so x squared. So GCF is a 10x squared. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that 20x to the 4th minus 10x squared, and we're going to divide by 10x squared, okay? So I'm going to put my 10x squared, the GCF out front, and then I'm going to divide it to see what it would be after I factor that out, okay? So 20x to the 4th divided by 10x squared. 20 divided by 10 is 2. And then if you had 4 x's and 2 on bottom, then 2 on bottom would cancel out with 2 of the ones on top, leaving you a 2x squared. And then negative 10x squared divided by 10x squared. So negative 10 divided by 10 is a negative 1, and 2 x's cancels out with 2 x's, okay? So we get 10x squared times 2x squared minus 1 on top. And then we've got to see if we have a GCF for 4 and negative 2, okay? Because right now, if I put 4x squared minus 2 on bottom, I wouldn't have anything that canceled out, okay? So let's look at 4 and 2. What is their GCF, right? So things that'll multiply to give me 4 is 1 times 4 and 2 times 2. Things that'll multiply to give me 2 is just 1 times 2. So their GCF is a 2, okay? So we're going to take 4x squared minus 2 and divide it by their GCF. Okay, so 4x squared divided by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2x squared. And negative 2 divided by 2 is a negative 1. So notice we got the exact same thing here, right? They're multiplied by 2x squared minus 1 on both top and bottom. So those can cancel out. And then we're just left with a 10x squared divided by 2. Well, 10x squared divided by 2 will simplify. 10 divided by 2 is 5x squared. This is your final answer. All right, last two examples. For this one, we're finding the GCF for 11x cubed plus 44x squared. So we have 11 with 3 x's, and then we have 44 with 2 x's, which means they have only 2 x's in common, okay? Things that'll multiply to give you 11 would just be 1 times 11. So your only possible greatest common factors would either be 1 or 11, right? The greatest one for 11 is 11, so let's see if 44 is divisible by 11. Well, 4 times 11 is 44, so their GCF would be 11. And then they had 2 x's in common, so 11x squared, right? So 11x squared is what I'm going to factor out. And to figure out what that would be, I'm going to divide. Okay? So 11 divided by 11 is just 1. If you have 3 x's and you take 2 away, that just leaves you with 1. So we're left with 1x, okay? And then 44x squared divided by 11x squared, your x squareds would cancel, and 44 divided by 11 would be plus 4. If you notice, that's what you have on bottom, okay? You have that x plus 4. So those two things would cancel out, leaving you just your 11x squared. This one has x and y's, but don't let that fool you. It's still the exact same thing, okay? So we're finding the GCF for 10x and a y squared, so we have 2 y's, and 8xy, okay? So GCF, they have 1 x in common and 1 y in common, okay? So 1 x and 1 y is going to be in common. We don't know about the numbers. So 1 times 10, 2 times 5, 1 times 8, 2 times 4. They don't both have a 10, they don't both have an 8, they don't both have a 5, they don't both have a 4. So their greatest common factor would be a 2. Okay, so GCF is 2xy, right? So we're going to factor out a 2xy. And let's see what that would be. So 10xy squared plus 8xy divided by 2xy. Right? So 10 divided by 2 is 5. X divided by x, they would cancel out. And y squared divided by y. So if you have 2 y's, the 1 y on bottom would cancel out one of the ones on top, leaving you just a 5y. And then 8xy divided by 2xy, your x's cancel, your y's cancel, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. Oops. 5y plus 4. It's not the same as what we have on bottom. Okay, if you notice on bottom, both terms have an x, right? So if I have 5xy and a 4x, the thing they have in common is they both have an x, okay? If you listed out everything that would multiply to give you 5 and everything that would multiply to give you 4, you would see that their greatest common factor is just a 1, okay? So you can't factor out a 1, it wouldn't change anything. And so really their GCF is just x, okay? So we're going to take the 5xy plus 4x, and we're going to divide it by its GCF of x. So 5xy divided by x, the x's would cancel, leaving you just a 5y. And then 4x divided by x, your x's cancel, leaving you a plus 4. So we have x out front, and then when we would divide it, it'd be 5y plus 4. So these would cancel. And then 2xy divided by x, your x's cancel, leaving us just a 2.